She was just another fighter pilot flying routine patrols over the frozen north. Her skills seemed ordinary, her missions unremarkable. Then an unidentified bomber appeared on her radar, penetrating restricted airspace. In that moment, her hidden past became impossible to conceal. Everything was about to change forever. Before you watch full story, comment below from which country are you watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories. Captain Sarah Mitchell was just another F-22 Raptor pilot at Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson in Alaska. She flew routine patrols along the northern border, monitoring airspace that rarely saw anything more exciting than commercial flights and the occasional lost civilian aircraft. Her squadron mates considered her competent but unremarkable, someone who followed procedures and did her job without fanfare. Nobody suspected that hidden deep in her classified service record was a past that would soon become impossible to conceal. The morning of October 15 started like any other. Sarah completed her pre-flight inspection of her F-22 as the Alaskan sun rose over the mountains surrounding the base. The air was crisp and cold, typical for autumn in Alaska. She checked every system on her aircraft with practiced efficiency, running through the same checklist she had completed hundreds of times before. Her gloved hands moved over the sleek surfaces of the Raptor, one of the most advanced fighter jets in the world, capable of speeds exceeding Mach 2 and equipped with stealth technology that made it nearly invisible to enemy radar. Lieutenant Marcus Webb, her wingman, was preparing his own F-22 nearby. He called out something about the upcoming weekend, asking if Sarah planned to join the squadron at the local bar. She smiled and nodded, giving him a thumbs up. Marcus was a good pilot, reliable and skilled, but like everyone else in the squadron, he had no idea about Sarah's previous assignment. Her personnel file showed a standard career path: flight school, initial training, assignment to air defense operations. What it didn't show were the redacted pages detailing her 3 years with a classified special operations unit. Sarah climbed into her cockpit at precisely 0800 hours. The canopy closed over her with a soft hiss, sealing her into the advanced cockpit filled with digital displays and sophisticated controls. She ran through her startup sequence, watching as each system came online and reported ready status. The tower cleared her for takeoff, and she advanced the throttle, feeling the immense power of the 2 Pratt & Whitney engines push her back into her seat. The F-22 accelerated down the runway and lifted smoothly into the clear sky. Her assigned patrol sector covered a vast area of airspace along the northern coast of Alaska, stretching from the Bering Strait eastward toward Canada. It was a critical zone for air defense, the first line of detection for any aircraft approaching North America from Russia or Asia. Sarah climbed to 40,000 feet and began her patrol pattern, a rectangular track that she would fly for the next 2 hours. Marcus flew 3 miles off her right wing, maintaining loose formation. The radio crackled with routine communications. Ground control acknowledged their position. Other aircraft in the region reported their status. Everything was normal, just another standard patrol in a long series of uneventful missions. Sarah's radar display showed the usual clutter: commercial airliners flying their scheduled routes at lower altitudes, some military transport aircraft, and the occasional private plane. Nothing unusual. Nothing threatening. Sarah had been flying for 45 minutes when something changed. Her APG-77 radar, one of the most advanced systems in any fighter aircraft, suddenly painted a contact at the extreme edge of its detection range. The target appeared as a blip on her display, approximately 200 miles to the northwest, flying at 45,000 feet and heading southeast toward the Alaskan coast. Sarah's training kicked in automatically. She locked the contact and began gathering information. The target was moving slowly, around 350 knots, which was unusual for that altitude. Most commercial jets flew faster. The radar return suggested a large aircraft, much bigger than a typical airliner. Sarah interrogated the target's transponder, expecting to receive the standard identification code that all civilian and military aircraft broadcast. Instead, she got nothing. No transponder response at all. That was extremely unusual and potentially dangerous. She keyed her radio with calm professionalism. Arctic Control, Raptor 11. I have unknown traffic bearing 330, range 200 miles, altitude Angels 45, heading 135. No transponder return. Request identification. There was a pause before ground control responded. Raptor 11, Arctic Control. Stand by for traffic correlation. Sarah waited, watching the contact on her radar. It maintained its steady course and altitude, not deviating at all. That bothered her. Commercial aircraft made small adjustments constantly, responding to wind conditions and air traffic control instructions. Military training flights followed precise patterns. This aircraft was flying like something on autopilot, following a predetermined course with absolute precision. Something about the contact triggered instincts that Sarah had developed during her classified assignment. She couldn't explain exactly what bothered her, but years of experience had taught her to trust those instincts. She narrowed her radar focus and studied the target more carefully. The radar cross-section was large, indicating a multi-engine aircraft with substantial size. The flight profile showed none of the normal variations she would expect from civilian traffic. Arctic Control came back on the radio, and Sarah detected a new edge in the controller's voice. Raptor 11, Arctic Control. We have no correlation with scheduled traffic. NORAD shows no filed flight plans in that sector. Unknown traffic is classified as unidentified aircraft. You are directed to close for visual identification. Weapons hold. Repeat, weapons hold. Maintain radio contact. Sarah acknowledged the order and banked her F-22 toward the contact. She advanced her throttle to military power, and the Raptor accelerated smoothly. The distance to the unknown aircraft began decreasing rapidly. Marcus followed her lead without question, his voice coming across the tactical frequency. Lead, you think we've got a lost civilian up there? Sarah kept her response neutral. Unknown at this time, too. We'll know more when we get visual. But in her mind, Sarah was already running through specialized procedures she had learned during her classified assignment. She had intercepted foreign military aircraft before, in situations where one wrong move could trigger international incidents. She knew how to read the subtle signs that distinguished routine border patrols from intelligence-gathering missions. She recognized the flight characteristics of bombers from multiple nations. Those skills had been buried in her classified record when she transferred to her current squadron, held in reserve for exactly this kind of situation. At 150 miles, Sarah's radar provided more detailed information about the contact. The return showed multiple distinct points, confirming a multi-engine aircraft. The size was consistent with a heavy bomber or large military transport. The aircraft was definitely not a civilian airliner. The profile matched something Sarah had seen before, during classified briefings about foreign military aircraft that occasionally probed American airspace. Arctic Control transmitted again, and this time Sarah recognized the voice of a senior officer who had taken over the frequency. Raptor 11, be advised NORAD has upgraded the contact to potential hostile. You are cleared to close for positive identification. Command Authority is monitoring this frequency. Report visual contact immediately. Sarah felt a familiar calm settle over her, the same mental state she had developed during her special operations training. Emotion became background noise. Decision-making followed practiced patterns. She was no longer just another pilot on routine patrol. She was a specialist dealing with a potential threat to national security. At 50 miles, Sarah began her final approach to the unknown aircraft. She descended slightly, positioning herself below and behind the contact where she could execute a standard intercept. The target remained steady, showing no indication that its crew had detected her approach. Her radar warning receiver stayed silent, meaning the unknown aircraft wasn't scanning with fire control radar. That suggested it wasn't immediately preparing for combat, but it also meant the crew was maintaining strict radio discipline. At 10 miles, Sarah spotted the contact visually. What she saw made her pulse quicken despite her years of experience. The aircraft was massive, a 4-engine strategic bomber with swept wings and a distinctive profile that Sarah recognized immediately from her classified training. She was looking at a Xian H-6, a Chinese strategic bomber based on the old Soviet Tu-16 design. The aircraft had no legitimate reason to be flying in this airspace, and its presence represented a serious security breach. Sarah could see the bomber's large fuselage, the twin-engine pods mounted under each wing, and the glazed nose section where the navigator would sit. The aircraft's military gray paint scheme confirmed this was no civilian aircraft that had strayed off course. This was a Chinese military bomber operating deep inside the Air Defense Identification Zone, heading directly toward the Alaskan coast. She keyed her radio with deliberate calm, knowing her next words would trigger alarms throughout the military command structure. Arctic Control, Raptor 11 has visual contact with unknown aircraft. Positive identification of a Chinese H-6 strategic bomber. 4-engine configuration. Cannot confirm weapons load. Aircraft is maintaining course 135, speed approximately 350 knots, altitude steady at Angels 45. Requesting further instructions. The radio fell silent for several seconds. Sarah imagined the controlled chaos her report had just triggered in command centers across the region. A Chinese bomber penetrating American airspace was exactly the kind of crisis that defense planners prepared for but rarely encountered. When Arctic Control responded, a different voice had taken over, senior and authoritative. Raptor 11, this is Arctic Actual. Maintain visual contact with the bomber and execute standard intercept positioning. Do not take any hostile action unless the aircraft demonstrates clear hostile intent. We are coordinating with NORAD and National Command Authority. Stand by for further instructions. Sarah acknowledged while maneuvering her F-22 into position alongside the bomber. She executed a careful approach, bringing her fighter from behind and below the H-6 before sliding up alongside its port wing. She stabilized her Raptor approximately 300 feet off the bomber's wing, close enough to observe clearly but far enough to avoid any risk of collision. Through the bomber's cockpit windows, Sarah could see Chinese aircrew members. They were definitely aware of her presence now. She saw crew members pointing at her F-22 and appearing to communicate urgently with each other. But the bomber maintained its course, not altering heading or altitude at all. That was concerning. Any legitimate aircraft would respond to an intercept, either by radio communication or by acknowledging the fighter's presence and altering course. Sarah studied the H-6 carefully, looking for details that might explain its mission. The bomber's external hardpoints appeared empty, which ruled out an immediate attack configuration carrying cruise missiles. But she noticed unusual pod-shaped installations under the fuselage that could be electronic warfare equipment or surveillance systems. This might be an intelligence-gathering flight rather than an attack mission, but that didn't make it any less serious as a violation of American airspace. Arctic Actual came back on the frequency with an update. Raptor 11, National Command Authority is attempting to establish communication with Chinese military authorities through diplomatic channels. You are directed to maintain visual contact and attempt radio communication on all emergency frequencies. If the aircraft alters course toward any populated areas or military installations, you are authorized to execute warning procedures. Sarah switched to the international emergency frequency and broadcast in the clear. Chinese military aircraft, this is United States Air Force fighter on your port wing. You are operating in United States-controlled airspace without authorization. Acknowledge this transmission and state your intentions immediately. She repeated the message in Mandarin, drawing on language training from her classified assignments. The radio remained silent except for static, but Sarah saw increased activity in the bomber's cockpit. The crew was clearly receiving her transmissions but choosing not to respond. Marcus's voice came across the tactical frequency, tension evident in his tone. Lead, what's your assessment here? This seems pretty serious. Sarah considered her response carefully. Her specialized training gave her insight that Marcus lacked. 2. Based on the aircraft type and behavior, this appears to be an intelligence-gathering mission. The bomber is configured for reconnaissance rather than attack. But the fact that they're maintaining course despite intercept procedures is concerning. Stay alert and maintain your position. The situation continued for another 10 minutes. Sarah flew alongside the H-6, broadcasting warnings on multiple frequencies while the bomber maintained its course toward the Alaskan coast. The Chinese crew remained visible in the cockpit but made no attempt to communicate or alter course. Sarah felt the tension building, knowing that if the bomber continued on its current heading, command authority would have to make difficult decisions about escalation. Then, at 80 miles from the coast, the bomber's flight profile changed. The H-6 began a gentle turn to port, banking slowly to the northwest. The maneuver was executed smoothly, showing professional crew coordination. The new heading pointed the bomber back toward international airspace, away from the Alaskan coast and any sensitive military installations. Sarah matched the turn, maintaining her position on the bomber's wing. She transmitted to Arctic Control. Arctic Actual, Raptor 11. Contact is altering course to northwest, heading approximately 310. Appears to be withdrawing from controlled airspace. The response came quickly. Raptor 11, Arctic Actual copies course change. Diplomatic channels confirm Chinese military authorities have made contact with the aircraft and ordered it to withdraw. You are directed to escort the bomber to the edge of the Air Defense Identification Zone and ensure it exits controlled airspace. Additional fighters are being scrambled to support if needed. Sarah acknowledged and settled into escort position. The flight back toward international waters took 30 minutes. During that time, Sarah maintained visual contact with the H-6 while Marcus flew supporting position. The bomber crew seemed resigned to their situation, maintaining steady course and speed while heading back the way they had come. As they approached the boundary of the ADIZ, Sarah studied the bomber one final time. She noticed details she would include in her debriefing: the specific equipment installations, the condition of the aircraft, the behavior of the crew. All of it would be valuable intelligence about Chinese military capabilities and intentions. At the ADIZ boundary, Arctic Control released her from the escort mission. Raptor 11, Arctic Actual. You are cleared to break off escort. Outstanding work on the intercept. Return to base for debriefing. Sarah executed a sharp turn away from the bomber, and Marcus followed. They headed back toward Elmendorf, leaving the H-6 to continue its flight back toward Chinese airspace. Sarah felt a mixture of relief that the situation had resolved peacefully and satisfaction that her training had proved essential when it mattered most. The landing at Elmendorf was routine, but Sarah could see command staff vehicles already waiting near the operations building. She knew the next several hours would be spent in intensive debriefing sessions, documenting every detail of the intercept for intelligence analysis and diplomatic purposes. The following days brought exactly the level of attention Sarah had expected. Her squadron mates looked at her differently now, with new respect and curiosity. How had she handled the situation so professionally? Where had she learned those procedures? The questions came constantly, but Sarah deflected them with vague references to training and following standard protocols. Commander briefings revealed that the Chinese bomber had indeed been on an intelligence-gathering mission, testing American response times and capabilities along the northern border. The diplomatic fallout played out at levels far above Sarah's rank, but she understood that her intercept had demonstrated American readiness and professionalism in ways that would influence strategic calculations in Beijing. 2 weeks after the incident, Sarah was called to her squadron commander's office. Colonel Roberts, a veteran pilot with 25 years of experience, studied her with frank assessment. "Captain Mitchell, your handling of the H-6 intercept was exemplary. The Air Force needs pilots with your combination of skills and judgment in critical positions. I've been authorized to inform you that you're being considered for return to special operations duty, this time as an instructor pilot training the next generation of specialists." Sarah met her commander's eyes and thought about the moment she had closed on that Chinese bomber, about the decisions she had made and the training that had prepared her for those decisions. She had spent months flying routine patrols while her classified skills remained dormant, treated as just another competent pilot. But when circumstances demanded it, those capabilities had proved their worth. "Sir, I'm honored by the opportunity," Sarah said. "Whatever the mission requires, I'm ready." Colonel Roberts nodded. "I thought you might say that. Your orders will come through in the next few weeks. Until then, continue your current assignment. But I think we both know you're not really just another pilot anymore, if you ever were." Sarah returned to her duties, flying more patrols over the northern border while waiting for her new assignment. Her squadron mates treated her with obvious respect now, asking her advice on intercept procedures and tactical situations. The comfortable anonymity of being just another pilot was gone, replaced by recognition of capabilities that could no longer remain hidden. 3 weeks later, Sarah received her official orders. She would be reporting to Langley Air Force Base in Virginia, joining an elite training unit that specialized in preparing pilots for classified missions requiring advanced tactical skills. It was a role that would put her expertise to use while developing the next generation of specialists who might one day face similar situations. On her final flight from Elmendorf, Sarah climbed through the Alaskan sky one last time, looking out over the mountains and coastline she had patrolled for months. Somewhere out there, beyond the horizon, other aircraft were probing American airspace, testing defenses and gathering intelligence. Other pilots would intercept them, making split-second decisions that could affect national security and international relations. Some of those pilots would have the specialized training to handle complex situations with the right combination of skill and judgment. Others would need to develop those capabilities through experience and education. Sarah would help provide that education, passing on the lessons she had learned through years of classified operations and real-world encounters with potential threats. As she turned south and headed toward her new assignment, Sarah reflected on how a single unknown contact on her radar had changed everything. She had been content flying routine patrols, her past experience hidden and dormant. But when that Chinese bomber appeared on her display, heading toward American territory with unknown intentions, her true capabilities had been revealed to commanders who needed exactly her combination of skills. The incident had proven that some capabilities couldn't be replaced by standard training. Specialized experience developed through classified operations created pilots who could handle ambiguous situations requiring judgment as much as technical skill. Sarah had been one of those pilots, temporarily assigned to routine duties while her expertise waited in reserve. The bomber had brought that expertise back into play, demonstrating its continued relevance in a world where airspace violations and international tensions remained constant challenges. Landing at Langley weeks later, Sarah felt ready for her new role. She would train other pilots, help them develop the instincts and skills needed for situations beyond normal operations. She would share the lessons learned from intercepting foreign military aircraft, from making decisions under pressure, from balancing tactical requirements with diplomatic considerations. The unknown bomber had been a test, one that revealed everything about who she was beneath the surface of routine assignments. Now she would help ensure that when the next unknown contact appeared on someone's radar, that pilot would be ready to handle whatever challenges followed. Some pilots were meant for routine operations, flying standard patrols and training missions. Others were meant for the complex situations requiring specialized capabilities. Sarah had proven she belonged in the second category, and now she would help identify and develop others who shared that potential. The sun set over Langley as Sarah completed her check-in procedures and prepared to begin her new assignment. Somewhere over Alaska, other pilots were flying the patrols she had flown, monitoring the same airspace where she had intercepted that Chinese bomber. They were ready for whatever appeared on their radars, backed by training and procedures designed to handle any situation. And if circumstances demanded capabilities beyond standard operations, specialists like Sarah would be ready to provide guidance, training, and expertise developed through years of experience in the most challenging situations military aviation could present. Her first week at Langley was intense. Sarah met the other instructors in the specialized training unit, all of them pilots with similar backgrounds involving classified operations and real-world intercepts of foreign military aircraft. They were a tight-knit group, bound by shared experiences that couldn't be discussed outside secure facilities. During her initial briefings, Sarah learned about the training program she would help deliver to selected pilots from across the Air Force. The program was designed to identify pilots with potential for special operations work and develop their skills through realistic scenarios based on actual incidents. Students would learn advanced intercept procedures, threat recognition, decision-making under pressure, and the diplomatic considerations that govern encounters with foreign military aircraft. Sarah would be teaching the same skills that had allowed her to handle the H-6 bomber intercept with confidence and professionalism. On her third day at Langley, Sarah gave her first lecture to a class of 12 pilots selected for the program. They sat in the briefing room, looking at her with mixture of curiosity and skepticism. Most of them were experienced aviators who had flown combat missions or served in high-performance units. They wondered what this captain could teach them that they hadn't already learned. Sarah began by describing the H-6 intercept without mentioning her own role. She presented it as a case study, walking through the tactical situation and asking the students how they would respond at each decision point. The discussion revealed gaps in their knowledge, situations they hadn't considered, and procedures they didn't know existed. By the end of the session, the skepticism had disappeared, replaced by engaged interest and respect for the expertise Sarah demonstrated. Over the following months, Sarah developed her teaching style and built relationships with her students. She shared lessons from her classified operations without revealing details that remained protected. She taught them to recognize the subtle signs that distinguished routine border patrols from intelligence-gathering missions. She explained how to balance aggressive positioning with diplomatic restraint, how to document hostile intent for legal and political purposes, and how to maintain tactical advantage while avoiding unnecessary escalation. The students responded to her instruction with enthusiasm. They recognized that Sarah was teaching from real experience, not just textbook knowledge. Her lessons came alive with practical details and situational awareness that only years of actual operations could provide. Several students told her that her classes had changed how they thought about their roles as fighter pilots, expanding their understanding beyond basic combat tactics to include the complex reality of modern air defense operations. 6 months into her assignment, Sarah was supervising a training exercise when she received word that one of her former students had successfully intercepted a Russian reconnaissance aircraft near Alaska. The pilot had executed the procedures exactly as Sarah had taught them, maintaining professional composure while documenting the Russian aircraft's violations and escorting it back to international airspace. The student's commander sent Sarah a personal message thanking her for the training that had prepared his pilot for the real-world situation. That message confirmed for Sarah that she had found her true calling. Teaching allowed her to multiply her impact, preparing dozens of pilots to handle situations that required specialized skills. Every student she trained became another asset for air defense operations, another pilot ready to respond professionally when unknown aircraft appeared on radar displays. Her expertise, developed through years of classified operations, was now benefiting the entire Air Force through the students she prepared for similar challenges. Sarah continued her work at Langley with renewed dedication. She refined her teaching methods, incorporated lessons from new incidents, and mentored junior instructors joining the program. Her reputation grew within the specialized community of pilots who handled sensitive air defense missions. Commanders requested her students specifically, knowing they had received training that prepared them for the most complex situations. On the first anniversary of the H-6 intercept, Sarah stood on the flight line at Langley watching F-22s take off for training missions. She thought about how much had changed in 1 year. She had gone from flying routine patrols as an anonymous pilot to becoming a recognized expert teaching the next generation of specialists. The unknown bomber that appeared on her radar had been the catalyst for that transformation, revealing capabilities that could no longer remain hidden and setting her on a path that utilized her full potential. That evening, Sarah received a secure communication from Air Force intelligence. Analysis of the H-6 bomber's mission had revealed something significant. The Chinese aircraft hadn't been on a routine intelligence-gathering flight as initially assessed. It had been testing a new electronic warfare system designed to jam American radar networks. Sarah's intercept had not only forced the bomber to withdraw, but had also provided valuable intelligence about Chinese capabilities that helped defense planners develop countermeasures. Her actions that day over Alaska had impacted national security in ways far beyond a simple airspace violation. The intelligence report also revealed that the Chinese military had changed their procedures for northern border operations following the incident. They recognized that American air defenses were more capable and responsive than they had estimated. Sarah's professional handling of the intercept had sent a clear message about American readiness without triggering the kind of escalation that could have resulted from a more aggressive response. Reading the report, Sarah understood that every decision she had made during that intercept had mattered. The calm professionalism, the graduated warnings, the careful documentation of hostile intent, all of it had contributed to an outcome that protected national security while avoiding unnecessary conflict. It validated everything she had learned during her classified operations and everything she was now teaching her students. She had been just an F-22 pilot until an unknown bomber appeared on her radar. That encounter had revealed her true capabilities and set her on a path that would define the rest of her career. Sarah was ready for whatever challenges that path might bring, prepared by experience and driven by commitment to excellence in the most demanding missions military aviation could offer. And now, through her teaching, she was ensuring that future generations of pilots would be equally prepared when their own moments of truth arrived on radar displays over distant borders. The legacy of that single intercept would continue through every pilot she trained, every student who carried forward the lessons she taught, and every future encounter where professionalism and expertise would make the difference between crisis and resolution. 2 years later, Sarah stood before a new class of students at Langley. Among them was a young captain named Jennifer Torres, who reminded Sarah of herself before the H-6 intercept. Torres was competent and professional, but hadn't yet faced a situation that would reveal her full potential. Sarah saw that potential in her eyes, the same quiet determination that had driven Sarah through years of classified operations. As Sarah began her lecture, she noticed Torres taking careful notes, asking thoughtful questions, absorbing every detail about intercept procedures and threat assessment. This was why Sarah had accepted the instructor role. Not for recognition or advancement, but for moments like this, when she could see the spark of understanding in a student's eyes, knowing that someday this pilot might face her own unknown bomber and be ready because of the training Sarah provided. The afternoon sun streamed through the briefing room windows as Sarah concluded her presentation. She looked at her students and saw the future of American air defense. Each one of them would carry forward the lessons learned from that day over Alaska. Each would be ready when their moment came. And that was Sarah's true legacy, not the intercept itself, but the countless future intercepts that would succeed because she had shared what she learned. Outside, F-22 Raptors roared into the sky, their pilots training for missions they might never fly, preparing for threats that might never materialize. But when those threats did appear on radar, when unknown bombers tested American airspace, those pilots would be ready. Sarah had made certain of that. Her journey from anonymous pilot to recognized expert to dedicated instructor had come full circle, and she knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she belonged.